podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to Humans of Speedway. I'm Ian Brannan, and in this episode we talk to a man who can define careers, make world champions, but also has some very difficult decisions to make too. Either way, meetings can't happen without a ref, and we have one of the best in World Speedway, SCB and FIM Speedway Grand Prix referee, Craig Ackroyd.
My phone went, "Can you come back? We've got a problem." The problem was that footage had been picked up that Smarslick had worn the wrong suit, and the process started of what to do. The rule book was fairly clear, well, not fairly clear, it was 100% clear that penalty was a fine and disqualification from the event. At that point, you've just got to do your job. That was the end of it, unfortunately.
The 2023 Danish Speedway Grand Prix will live long in Craig Ackroyd's memory. More about that to come in a little while. We'll also talk about his journey from Grasstrack to the ref's box. He wants to be a rider in his younger days, and indeed was riding alongside the likes of Stonehewer, Garry, Stead and Garry Havelock. And we'll also talk about some of the quirks of the rulebook as well. All on the way. So it's my great pleasure to welcome to Humans of Speedway, SCB and FIM referee Craig Ackroyd. Welcome to Humans of Speedway, Craig.
No problem. Thanks for asking me. It's good to talk to you, Ian. Thank you.
Well, great to have you on. Usually I start by saying, how did you get involved in Speedway? But your dad, I think, are you the first father and son? No, because we've had Leon Flint and Gary Flint on. But your dad has been a guest on Humans of Speedway before. Your dad is Paul Ackroyd, who's now the man in charge of the Speedway Ben Fund. But your dad was, of course, a successful referee, and we've done an episode with him, and you can hear about his career in the sort of 70s, 80s and 90s refereeing. So we have a good idea of how you got involved in Speedway. So was that it then? Were you dragged along by your dad, or did it go further back than that?
That's what started. I mean, it started with both my grandparents were Speedway fans, and they took both my parents as it came to be. And then my dad, like you said, my dad was a referee. I rode junior Grasstrack with sort of a lot of people who went on to be Speedway riders, and that's what I had ambitions to do. But sadly, I wasn't probably quite good enough to follow in the footsteps of some of the people who I used to race with. But I think back in the day, the pool of talent was massive. I mean, just from the club I rode at in Lancashire, we had sort of Andy Smith had just finished. Garry Havelock was riding in that club. Joe Screen, Stonehewer, and that was all, sort of top world-class riders all came through within sort of a short space of time. But sadly, I wasn't one of them.
Quite a rich time, though, and, Grasstrack was the initial sort of learning ground, wasn't it, for Speedway? And there's some big, what went on to be big names in the sport there at the time.
That's it. I mean, and as well as those, there's, a lot more sort of really good riders like, Gary Stead, John Armstrong, people who had shorter careers, Anthony Boyd, Richard Musson, Stuart Robson, another long-term rider. His brother Scott was sort of before me. So there's loads. The list was sort of endless, and that sort of was near enough where all British Speedway riders came from at that time. And
there's this misconception, perhaps, that referees have never ridden a Speedway bike, and that can never be said for you. You have given it a go. You've thrown your leg over a bike. You've done some Grasstrack. You've raced with Garry Havelock and Garry Stead and Stonehewer in that era. So is there maybe an appreciation of that from riders, that they know that you understand what you're talking about a little bit from that point of view? Yeah,
I think so. Maybe. And maybe it was the fact that I had the opportunity to start refereeing at quite a young age, and these guys were racing, and I'd known some of them since we were sort of 6-7 years old. So yeah, maybe the riding part, but sort of the respect comes from, in anything, you've got to earn it, haven't you? And just having ridden a bike doesn't give you that respect. It's sort of doing the job and earning that, doing the job as a referee.
And your dad was, of course, a referee, as we've mentioned. And so with that, did you have a particular team that you supported growing up, or any Any riders you idolised at that time?
I just about remember my dad was a Halifax fan, and I remember going there sort of as a young child. And then my dad started training to be a referee and became a referee latterly. And so then my watching Speedway was around the country at sort of every track. So I'd never really had a club that I was a supporter of. I was just a fan of the sport in general.
Becoming a referee puts you in the spotlight, of course, and you went into this with your eyes open because you've seen what your dad's gone through. You know, he's refereed some big meetings, made some big calls, not always very popular either. Times where he's been barricaded in the box or escorted out of the ground for his own safety. You knew what you were getting yourself into as well, and so was that ever a concern that this doesn't necessarily make me the most popular person in a stadium every time? Yeah,
I'd seen it. I mean, my dad's era when he was refereeing in the 80s, he did some meetings, where it was on World of Sport live on a Saturday afternoon, and the report of the meeting would be on the back page of the News of the World on the Sunday. So it was, big stuff then. And so I did know the some of the downsides. But when you're at a young age, you don't really think about it, do you? You just think, oh, yeah, that's fine, thick skin, that's fine.
Well, yeah, you certainly need skin like a rhino, I think, at times. So you'd given Speedway a crack, you'd done the Grasstrack, and it was evident that you probably weren't going to match the likes of Carl Stonehewer, but then came along the opportunity to get into refereeing. So how did it start for you? Because I think for many fans, it's a bit of a mystery world, really. How do you go about becoming a referee?
Yeah, they'd had a change at the Speedway Control Board. There's David Hughes was in charge, and Graham Brodie was working with him, and they sort of moved on from sort of the old school era, and they'd taken Graham Flint on as a referee a couple of years before, and he was sort of probably 15 to 20 years younger than most of the other referees, and he'd done a good job and was well respected, and so the shift was to sort of look for some younger people who had sort of previously not been considered. So David Hughes asked me, he said, "Oh, have you ever thought about doing it?" And I was like, "No, not really." And I was sort of 22 then. I was out of university, just started working, so life had changed. And he said, "Well, there is going to be interviews if you're interested." So I did an application, went for the interview, along with 4 or 5 others, was given the opportunity to start training. And that's where it started. Trained for 2 seasons after passing sort of 3 tests along the way and sort of various probationary periods. And then you become qualified as a referee, and that's where it started. Did first meetings at the end of the 99 season, and then was fully on board the panel of referees for 2000 onwards.
And there you are, a bona fide referee. And it is a long process, isn't it? But part of that process is also you getting sort of dropped in at the deep end as well, isn't it? That you'll just get told, right, this is the meeting you're doing, you're running this meeting now, and it's all over to you. You've got nobody else to hide behind. Can you take us back to that day?
It's sort of a build-up. You sort of... you're learning, you're going with different referees, going to different tracks. You might take charge of some second half racing, and then you take maybe some National League racing or Conference League racing as it was. And then some meetings once the result isn't in doubt anymore. Sort of things where if it goes wrong, it's not quite so important. And then it moves to where you have to do, important match deciding races to, be in a position where you can do that on your own when you've not got another referee sat there to, sort of help and guide you.
And obviously you start off fairly low level to keep you out of the spotlight, I suppose, and find your feet. But eventually you're going to start getting given some serious meetings, some big meetings where there is a bit more focus on you. And what would you class as your first big meeting in the spotlight?
Well, I'd say proper big matches. I did what was then the Conference League Riders final, which was at Rye House. It was the first sort of individual championship. I think I was in sort of second year of refereeing. and that sort of felt, for me, it was a massive meeting for me. It was the biggest thing I'd done. And it went well and I enjoyed it. And then that moved on. I think the year after that I did knockout cup final. And then it sort of gradually just moved on, sort of a Premier League Riders' Championship, maybe a knockout cup or a league deciding meeting in the top league. And it just sort of gradually moved on from there. And there is more pressure on some of those meetings, but then it's sort of putting that to the back of your mind and just doing the job exactly the same as what you would any other meeting.
And did you find that when you were the new kid on the block as a referee, you'd have experienced team managers, even team captains, getting on the phone, trying to put one on you, put you under a bit of pressure and maybe try and get you into feeling that you owed them a decision later on and things like that?
Yeah, 100%. I remember that 2000 season, after about 6 weeks, I'd had a hard time. I was talking to people saying, well, I don't know if this is for me. I'm getting flack and stick everywhere I go. It's, people putting you under massive pressure, team managers ringing, race after race. What have you done there? What have you done that? And people had said, no, they're just testing you. You knew, they're seeing how far they can push you. Stick to your guns, stand your ground, do your job. And eventually it'll just die off. People say, actually, it's pointless. He's not going to change. And it did sort of go on from there. But there's some strong characters. I mean, characters like Eric Bucock as a team manager. He'd be, England international rider, England team manager, World Cup team manager. And so, they're vastly experienced people. And I was sort of in my early 20s, sort of thrust into sort of dealing with them, telling them what to do in some respects. And it wasn't easy, but it turned a corner and sort of became enjoyable fairly quickly.
I can imagine having a phone call from Eric Bucock at full whack down the phone is quite something to behold.
Yeah, he backs his corner 100%. Let's put it that way. And once he thinks he's right in his mind. There's no change in it. Well, there's people like Peter Thorogood from the Lakeside or Arena Essex as it was then. I seem to have a run of sort of Arena Essex away from home, and he was a strong character and testing, to say the least.
I imagine. I was doing a commentary on BSN with Stuart Dixon, actually, and he had spotted that it was a newer referee in one match we were doing, and he did suggest, he said, if I was the team manager, I would be ringing that referee just to put a bit of doubt in his mind, and maybe you might get something later on, and he's sort of nudging us and he says, this is the sort of thing you got to do, and so that sort of stuff does go on.
So that's where you've got to sort of put it to the back of your mind and just do the job race by race, treat everyone the same and be fair, not let that pressure, not let that second decision be clouded by, I was having a hard time after one race, I was having even harder time after 2 races. It's just, like you say, it's just testing. It's they're doing their job. They're trying to gain any little advantage that they see that they might get.
I guess one thing that's different from your dad's day now is social media. You make a decision and everybody's got an opinion on it, published online within seconds. And, that's an extra element now that referees have to contend with, where previously, of course, it didn't exist until 15 years ago or so.
That's it. It's scrutinised. When I first started, I remember your decision was what people had seen in the stadium. And then there was a little report in the Speedway Star the following Thursday, which was written by somebody from the home team generally. So if it had gone for the home team, you'd probably get a relatively good report. If it went against the home team, you'd get highly criticised, and that was the end of it. But now, like you say, it's the streaming's excellent coverage from the likes of BSN. But then there's other things, people might video races on the phone and then they put footage on social media, and like you say, discussion spirals, quickly after a meeting, and it is completely different.
And your view is different from the TV cameras. You're not always bang in line with the start gates due to the quirks of the stadium. So just talk to us about that, the difference in the different refereeing boxes around the various leagues.
Yeah, Wolves, Birmingham, not in line with the start. This isn't a criticism. It's sadly a part of, a lot of tracks are not in their own stadium, and that goes with the referee. The pits might not be the best that they could be. Some of the spectator facilities are not the best, and that follows on the referees' boxes are sometimes not where they'd like them to be, but it's where they have to be. And it doesn't. You work with what you've got, but it's not always 100% how you'd like it, given the option.
And the layout of the controls is different. Where you have to sit and how you see a meeting is different. I mean, for example, in some of the boxes I've seen, Oxford is nice and high up with what looks like a relatively simple control box. Edinburgh is in a nice position, and like the controls are all like little doorbell buttons almost. So a wide variety of controls to get to grips with.
Yeah, that's it. They're different, and the ones where you're behind glass, you have to turn the light off during the racing, because otherwise the reflection reflects back in and you can't see. But then the other thing is the switch panel might be, in darkness, and so you can't always. You've got to be sort of familiar with where the right buttons are going to be, but you don't want your hand sort of hovering over a red light waiting to stop a race too anxiously when you don't need to. So it's tricky sometimes. Sheffield, for example, the control panel's to the left of you, so you have to sort of stand looking out the window, but with your body twisted, with your arms the other way around to be able to get to the panel. But on the other hand, Sheffield, you're high up, the window's open, and you get a great view. So I'd always say, as a referee, I'd take that view over a little bit of trickiness in the panel being to the side of you.
On the flip side, what is the dream box for you, the best place to referee a match from in this country?
I'd say in this country, I think Oxford at the minute's the best for me. You're high up, you get a good view. I prefer a box where the window opens. So I prefer the feel of, you get the noise, you can hear the bikes, you can you feel more part of it. There's some good boxes in some of the bigger stadiums. Some Polish ones have good boxes, but you could be behind glass completely separated. And for me, it's just a personal feeling. I like it when you're sort of out in the open a bit more. Stoke was always a good box. That was high up in the top of the stand, quite close, window open. That was a good one for me. Coventry are the same.
Yeah, that'll be a good one to get back as well, fingers crossed, at some point. What's the process then for a referee? Because obviously people will see you get into the box, might see you just walking around the pits beforehand or checking the air fences or things like that before a meeting begins. But it starts long before that, doesn't it? Just talk us through the amount of work that you need to do prior to a standard meeting.
Yeah, we get allocated. We get allocated our meetings in batches. So at the beginning of the season, we get sort of March, April, May, and then during that period, we get sort of June to August. But then they do change. You get rain-offs, cancellations, just general changes of fixtures. But once you're going somewhere, you sort of plan your working schedule around the fact you're going there that day. Then in the build up to it, the teams we have a dedicated website where the home team, having got the team lineup from the away team, he posts it on a website. We access that, and then we check that what they've put is correct, against their team declarations. Any changes are, fit with what you can do. Then we have sort of other sort of things we have to check, sort of injured riders. Are they definitely injured? We get a list of that. People who've had sort of concussion injuries, we might have to check that they're maybe allowed back after a certain time or not allowed back after a certain amount of time. And then we fill in, as you've seen for your BSM work, we fill in sort of an online scorecard. We prepare that ready. We print off all the documents that we might need for that specific meeting, in terms of like a track homologation certificate, which gives us the safety aspects and how the track should be laid out. And so we probably do an hour to 2 hours prep work sort of in the days leading up to the meeting. That's on top of ironing your shirt, cleaning your shoes.
and cleaning your shoes can be a big job depending on if you've been somewhere the night before. Some of those tracks, it doesn't half stick.
Yeah, it's like a clay one. You come out, half a foot taller than what you were when you set off, yeah.
Yeah, well, Kings Lynn certainly sticks to your shoes. I can tell you that in personal experience. And so, what time do you normally turn up for a meeting then? How long before tapes up are you there and in the stadium?
Yeah, we try and get there 2 hours before. The travelling's become more of an issue over the last sort of period of years. So now you tend to be getting there more early because you've got to sort of expect that you're going to get stuck in traffic and sort of allow that extra time. Get there 2 hours before. Usually, first protocol is the home promoter. Make sure everything's all right with them. That they've not had any issues with the track or the stadium and building up to it. Then you go into the box and do you sort of check the program against all the pre-work you've done. Then it's sort of, you talk to the two team managers, make sure the teams that they're giving you are, set of what's going to happen. Because with the way riders are now, riding sort of 7 days a week, some of them, it could be that they're giving you a team 2 days before, but a rider's got injured or something's happened the day before. So just make sure that's as it should be. And then it's your track inspection, which is matching the track to the homologation certificate, basically. So it's making sure the fence, the air fence, the panels, and everything is as it should be, which can change. I mean, especially some of the stadiums where it's not their stadium and there's been dog racing or stock cars, things get moved and, not necessarily put back in the same place as what they should be. And a fresh pair of eyes walking around looking at things can sometimes just see something that's, been missed or just not obvious to everyone else.
And so the meeting happens, you do everything that you need to do, and hopefully it passes off all peacefully. What work is there then after a meeting for you to do? Yeah,
we do sort of two reports. The first one's the match scorecard that gets sent off. Now with the new system that we used last year, it's sort of, you can do it live online, so it's there sort of straight away. And then we do a meeting report, which sort of just gives any details of anything else, checks that have been carried out. We usually do carburetor checks. If you're on a meeting, it's the list of all the other officials, which is sort of our pre-meeting job is just bringing everyone together. The technical officer, the medical officer, the clerk of the course, and then the meeting report just puts down any information that's sort of been derived by what people have done on the night.
I know that on BSN we spoke to Wendy at Kings Lynn, machine examiner, and we asked her about has she found anything unusual in a bike when she's been inspecting them, and I think she'd once found a load of bags of Haribo inside a bag. Have there been sort of strange things sort of crop up on bikes that shouldn't ordinarily be there?
Not as strange as that, but it's no. I mean, Wendy's a great machine examiner, and she also does sort of FIM environmental work and clerk of the course work, so she is good. And if anyone was going to spot Haribo in a bike, it'd be Wendy. But no, most of the time it's safety checks more than anything. Fairness, as in that nobody's cheating with any illegal sort of parts to the bike or modifications, but most of the time it's safety wise. It's, a rider could have had a crash and something's cracked or loose or a spoke's missing in the wheel, and it's genuine things that they've not spotted or haven't picked up on, and the machine examiner sort of makes them aware of it and makes the bike safe again.
This is Humans of Speedway. I'm Ian Brannan, and that is Craig Ackroyd, a British and FIM referee. Craig is one of the few referees on the Speedway Grand Prix circuit as well, and has been for a number of years. We'll find out how he got there and what it's like when you have to exclude Bartosz Szmarszlik, not just from a race, from an entire meeting, on the way in the next part of Humans of Speedway. You're listening to Humans of Speedway. I'm Ian Brannan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast. There's more places than ever that you can listen to it, not just Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Now available on YouTube as well, purely as an audio podcast. So check us out on there. Follow it on all of them so you don't miss any new episodes as they come along. The episode after this is going to be epic. You don't want to miss that. We'll be chatting with one of the greatest riders of all time, Hans Nielsen. Will be on the podcast in the next episode. Right now, though, we're talking about life in the referee's box with British and FIM referee Craig Ackroyd. Craig, we've talked about how you got into things in British Speedway and your sort of general progression there. Moving up to the very top level, though, how did that come about to get the opportunity to become a referee on the Grand Prix series?
I started in Britain, as we've said, and that sort of moved on, and I was given the opportunity to do more sort of what you would say prestigious meetings and elite league riders final, league deciders, and then an opportunity came where the FIM said they needed more referees, and Britain said you could apply, and the criteria was you had to have refereed minimum of 5 full seasons in Britain, and then you could write a written application, which so I can't remember how many people applied, but a few of us fit the criteria and wanted to do it. Some people didn't want to. We had a written application, which led to then an interview in Britain. And then there was myself and Jim Lawrence, who after the interview in Britain were given the opportunity to go to an FIM seminar, which was then sort of a full seminar of the rules and regulations for the FIM, and then an exam at the end of it. We both passed the exam and were given an FIM license then. But that year the meetings had already been allocated, so sort of nothing happened then for nearly 12 months. Then the following season we were both given one meeting each, which was sort of, a tester. I think mine was a team under 21 qualifying round. So what you'd say, at that point it was, to me it was massive. To referee a meeting in another country was, dreams. But you would say it was, FIM wise, a relatively low key meeting, a way of getting into the processes and the way it works and working with the jury system. Then that moved on. The year after that, I did sort of 2 or 3 meetings, maybe an under 21 second qualifying stage round. And then that built up to, a GP early qualifying round, maybe. And then I think I did, by 2008, I did the under 21 world final, which was when it was still a one-off final. Then a couple of years after, I did the GP Challenge. Then 2011, I was allocated the World Cup and did that, and then moved on to the GPs from there. So it was the same as in British Speedway. It was sort of a gradual build-up of, stepping stone, so to speak, through the ladder of the way the meetings are.
But relatively quickly, really, you've gone from refereeing at Buxton to now refereeing World Championship events. That's a different level of gravy you're dealing with there, Craig.
It is, and it's a strange feeling, because until you do it, you don't really know how you're going to feel until you're in the position of sat in the box about to press the tapes for the first race. You don't think, but to me, perhaps I was lucky I can sort of switch off from some of it and it's just the same job. The job's the same. whether it is a World Championship GP round, those individual riders in that race, it means just the same to them, and it's just as important to give them the fair opportunity on the track. It's in terms of everybody else, and it is bigger and more important. But for the individual rider in the race, it means the same. If they're excluded, what they say unfairly, they're still just as upset, and the process is the same.
And in some ways, though, was it like going back to the beginning again, where you're in the box, you've got some very experienced riders in front of you? I don't know, the likes of Nicky Pedersen, for example, just to use one. They're on the phone, they know that they can give you a bit of a hard time, put you under a bit of pressure, try and make you think twice before making a decision. Does it go back to that era again? Yeah,
definitely. The first, Nicky's a carrot. Nicky's great. He's a great guy. I get on well with him. But yeah, when the red mist descends and he thinks he's been wronged, he doesn't hold back. And that's fair to say. Jason Crump, again. Jason's, he's a stern character when he's in race mode. And if he thinks you've treated him unfairly, he won't hold back at telling you that. Most riders, if they end up on the phone to you, it's because in that instance they think you've made the wrong decision and they've been, mistreated, and so they're never going to be happy. And that filters down to sort of National League level. It could be different. If you hit the track, it hurts. However tough the riders are, it does hurt. So all of a sudden, they perhaps bash themselves around a bit. National League rider, their thought process, they might have caused £500 or £1,000 worth of damage to a bike. So that could be the trigger to be unhappy. GP, it's more the value of the bike being bent is sort of different. It's more the loss of points that will make them unhappy. But yeah, you get some. Once they're on the phone, it's not normally to say, "Oh, thanks very much. Really enjoyed that." It's normally to lodge a certain degree of displeasure.
Is it in some ways, I want to say easier, but you've got the backup with, say, TV replays and things like that you can refer to?
Yeah, the replays, they certainly do help, and it's in tough or tricky situations, it gives you more perspective on it. But you do have to be careful because watching the speed of the sport and the way it is, and the contact of the rider, watching a slow motion replay, zoomed right in, is not always how it sort of has taken place in real time. And quite often, sometimes, a replay might show a rider's been clipped, the back wheels clipped the front wheel and knocked him off. And it might show that from 3 different angles. But if you rewind by 5 seconds, 15 metres down the track, it could be that the guy on the outside's cut right in and sort of initiated that contact. And so it's good to use the replays, but you've got to look at, the reality and the build-up of the situation as well, not just the outcome of it.
What for you are the biggest calls that you've had to preside over at, the top level of Speedway?
One that's sort of an early one was the first World Cup I did, and there was a close finish in the net. It was in the old format where it was 25 heats, and it was heat 24, and there was a close finish between second and third. But that 1 point was sort of made it sort of, the gap was 1 point going into the last race. So that was a big one, but it wasn't seen, for me, that was massive because it was sort of match deciding almost, but it wasn't match deciding because it wasn't a crash or there was no controversy about it. In terms of incidents, probably the biggest one's been the Holder Pedersen first bend incident, which was basically the last round at Torren, and it was a deciding between those two riders. Had Holder been disqualified, it would have given Pedersen a big chance to go on and beat him and win the World Championship. So that was probably, in terms of the outcome, was one of the biggest ones. But again, you go with what you think's right, and that's all you can do.
I guess there must be something where you've pressed that button or whatever you did, to exclude that rider, or you've announced that rider is out, and there must be that flash through your mind maybe that, have I done the right thing? But obviously you have to back yourself, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, my thought process is, I mean, we still referee more meetings without replays than what we do with. So I always make a decision based on what I've seen in real time, as I normally would, write it on my pad. And I work on the basis that if I turn around to watch a replay and they say, oh, sorry, there isn't any, I work on the fact that I've got a decision. And then once the replays come, I kind of use them to back up what I've seen in real time almost. And then if you watch an angle and it says, oh, no, actually that looks differently. So then I might sort of watch a different angle and say, oh, actually, yeah, every angle shows it a different way to what I saw the first time, or 2 out of 3 show the same as what I thought. It's just an obscure angle that makes it look a little bit different. So it's, sort of using a combined picture to put together what you're going to do.
And so that's what you do then. You write it down straight away as soon as before you forget, and you've got that to refer to then, because I guess that's the thing, in the intervening moments you could have a lot going on in your mind. Yeah,
that's it. And if I always think you've seen that in real time. It's how it's happened in normal speed, real time view, and then you're not just relying on the replay. Sometimes, I mean, the replays are great and they do show when you're a bit unsure. I'm not quite sure whether he went underneath him. Was there any contact or was there not? But then you've got that in your mind and you're already deciding, yes, if there was contact, I'm excluding the rider on the inside. If there was no contact, I'm excluding the rider on the outside. And it's, and you're just using the replay to just verify whether whether there was contact or not. So like I say, it's a mixture of putting it together, both parts of it.
I was looking at some of the fixtures that you've done over this last season, and Voyens certainly was a tasty weekend for you, to say the least. This was the fixture, of course, where, world champion elect, Bartosz Szmarszlik was there for his victory parade almost, and then things changed pretty quickly, didn't they?
Yeah, it was a busy weekend. We'd already had SGP2 final round on the Friday, and that had gone. Cherniak had sort of, he nearly blew it. He sort of let his nerves get the better of him and touched the tapes in his semi-final ride, and that nearly gave the chance to somebody else. And that was already quite dramatic the night before, and then we arrived for GP on the Saturday, undertook qualifying and practice, no problem. Everything ran smoothly and nobody thought anything of it. It's a full-on day, and I normally only get about an hour after qualifying and the draw and everything before you start the work for the meeting. So I usually go for a bit of a walk or fresh air, or just get away from everybody for a while. About 5 minutes into that, my phone went, "Can you come back? We've got a problem." And the problem was that footage had been picked up that Szmarszlik had worn the wrong suit. So everyone had nobody had spotted it during the practice, during the qualifying, not one person. Phil Morris was there in the pits, he'd not seen it. My job in the box, I look at, as they come out on track, I sort of verify the numbers on the back of them, because that's to make sure that the right riders are in that qualifying run, and then they just go around and you think nothing more of it. So once she saw it, was quite surprised, and then the process started of what to do. The rule book was fairly clear. Well, not fairly clear. It was 100% clear that the penalty was a fine and disqualification from the event. I think it was a strong penalty, but it had been put in to prevent people from maybe doing it for commercial gain, using their own suits rather than the one that had the SGP sponsor, the flag, and all the other information it should have on. as to where somebody could wear, a fully sponsored suit and take a small fine. The penalty had to be severe to sort of discourage it. But where the rules, they didn't vary between an accident where somebody did it mistakenly to where somebody did it purposely. It was just, if you've worn the suit, this is the penalty. It was a difficult day, and it wasn't very nice, to be honest. It was not everybody who was involved in it. It wasn't the outcome that they wanted, but you're there to do a job, and you're not there to sort of change the rules or decide on the rules. At that point, you've just got to do your job, and that was the end of it, unfortunately.
And this decision was made by the FIM jury. Of course, you would be involved in that. But what is the process then? Is that like a vote? Is that how do you come to that decision if it's a number of people involved?
Yeah, there's jury for the jury for a Grand Prix is 4 people. So it's the jury president is usually from a country or federation. Then there's a local representative so in this case from the Danish Federation. Myself as the referee and Phil Morris as the race director. So it's to give, a balanced view and different opinions on things that crop up. So in this case, we spoke to Bartosz, and said, this is what's happened. This is what could happen. And he gave, we had sort of the process is to have a hearing, and he has the opportunity to give his side of the story. Then we go away as the jury and preside over the rules, and have to come up with the outcome. And in this case, the outcome was sort of fixed. The rule book was fixed. The penalty was fixed, and there was no any personal thoughts from anyone. There was no other way around it.
And what was his reaction then? In
all honesty, is more professional than what I would have thought a lot of people could have been in that situation. I mean, the what it could happen, to be thrown out of a whole round, when he's sort of, like you say, world champion elect almost. He was unhappy. He was very unhappy, but unhappy with the situation. He was still, relatively polite. He did his job and he came and discussed it with us. But yeah, he wasn't happy. But he was unhappy with the situation, not any people or anything anybody had done. I think he just couldn't actually believe what had happened or was happening. I think that shows because, and actually afterwards, he went away, he accepted it, he didn't appeal against it. He just said, no, the mistakes happened, and I've took my penalty, and I just need to go on and win in Torren now, and put it to bed almost, which he did.
Yeah, as it goes, it could have been a lot worse, couldn't it? But on the subject of Grand Prix, you mentioned there, Phil, you're not alone, are you? You have this race director. So how does the race director at an event like that interact with the referee? Are you in constant contact with Phil, and what does that entail?
You got headphones to Phil permanently through the meeting, so you got headphones and microphone to speak to him. So it's a great link, to be honest. He's in the pits. He can Phil's role with the timing is making it run smoothly for the event in the stadium, and for the TV show, which is being filmed once, but then split into sort of multinational broadcasts. So his job is putting that together in a timely manner. So the gaps between the races are fairly quick. Sort of the riders will come off the track at the end of the race, and immediately they've cleared the track, the next riders will be pushed off for the next race. So my job is, it's quicker. I kind of write down on a pad, red, blue, white, yellow, in letters of the result of that race, and then I have to leave it at that, watch them go off the track, 2 minutes on for the next race, set the clock going, and then I go back to my computer for filling in the proper score sheet, by which time the riders are at the start. And in that period of time, Kelvin's, they've shown the result on the screen. They've shown a couple of laps replay of that previous race. And then, it's the same all the time. Then it pans back to the start line and it's got the block across the bottom with who's in the next race, what points they've got, etc. And it sort of should run fairly smoothly. Phil's where the communication tends to come in is if there's a delay or a stoppage or anything happens, and he can sort of advise me and say, his bike's damaged, we're just going to give him this amount of time. The rider's getting checked up, or there might be a track problem, fence panel needs replacing. And then it's, he can advise fairly quickly so that when we can go, as soon as possible without, minimal delay.
The starts in a Grand Prix are different. There is a computer system that decides when the tapes are going to rise. This is something that's coming to British Speedway as well in 2024. So just explain to us how that works and what your experience is of having used it on the Grand Prix series.
Yeah, it's a random timed box. So basically you press one button which activates the green light, and then after a random period of time between two set points, then the tapes go up automatically on their own. So it is different. It was difficult in a way to sort of just get used to it to start with. But personally, I think it's had a positive outcome. I think it's moved away from, because the gaps vary. The variation when you time it, it's a reasonable variation. It's not ridiculous, but it moves away from the riders being able to anticipate the tapes going up, and now it's sort of, it starts at Grand Prix are more favoured to the people who've got the best reactions rather than the best anticipation.
And riders have long tried to anticipate the referee. Is this something that you notice as a referee? You can sort of work out when riders have rumbled the pattern of play, if you like? We
can see it in British racing sometimes. The variation of the starts is not massive, so riders can sort of anticipate, the count, it's going to go, and they're anticipating, which is where we get the he's made a perfect start, he's gone exactly as the tapes go up, and that's where it's difficult as a referee sometimes to sort of judge whether he's a rider's, is it a perfect start, have they made a lightning reaction, or have they just gambled and gone and got it spot on, and it's difficult. Which, if they get it spot on, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just moving. If you move before the tapes go, that's when you should be brought back.
And one thing that people have long asked about is that rule about movement. What constitutes movement? What is the point between letting it go and bringing the riders back to the tapes again because of an unsatisfactory start? Yeah,
they should be totally still, but it's also, it's lucky, if somebody moves but then they disadvantage themselves, you should allow that to carry on, really, because it's not fair on the other three. But then you look in, did their movement, if they're in gate 1 and there's somebody in gate 2, did they disadvantage themselves and the person in gate 2 as well? So and this is watching sort of all 4 riders at racing speed all at the same time. So I think we try and get it right. I've had ones that I've done where I've thought somebody's moved, too early. They've shot out half a bike length in front of everybody else. When I've watched all 4 at racing speed, that's how it looked. When I've seen a replay slowed down, focused on one rider on his own, it might look differently. But that's it's tricky sometimes. I think in terms of what spectators want, which is less restarts, people not brought back if they've just made it. We want the same, and it's what we strive for. And when we get it wrong, when we pull somebody back unfairly, it is that it's a mistake. It's what you've seen at racing speed. And I think the amount of times that happens is relatively minimal compared to the number of races that take place.
Is there an argument these days to have more than one referee at a meeting? Certainly the bigger ones, so you've got an extra pair of eyes and ears elsewhere in the stadium, or even if it's just alongside you to help make some of these big calls.
Yeah, it can be. You could have it at the start. You could say both of you watch the start. If both one referee watches the outside two, one referee watches the inside two, you're only watching two instead of four. It narrows the chance for missing something. You could say put a referee on the third bend where it's tricky to see. It's the furthest point away for a referee to see if somebody dives up the inside, is the contact or not. But if you put somebody on the third bend, then there could be a crash on the second bend, and they can't see that. So it's how far you go. And I think in Speedway, the obviously the finances are, putting extra people in every position is not always, it's not viable all the time. And if we look at VAR in football, they've got kind of unlimited finance to produce anything they want to get the right decision. I don't know how many people sit in Stockley Park in the studio, but it seems a lot. And then the referee, then the screen, and the two linesmen, and the fourth official, and they still get decisions wrong and get criticised for certain things. So yeah, maybe there is an argument for that, but I don't think it's the be all and end all.
Something we see in rugby, we see it in NFL, plenty of other sports. We hear the referee speak, and quite often you're in a box next to somebody with a microphone. Do you think sometimes it would help to have the referee come on the mic and just explain a decision sometimes, and that might sort of help with this criticism that potentially you might get? Yeah,
I think sometimes it would help. Especially when there's some, we have got some complicated rules in Speedway, and sometimes it is just a genuine people think, oh, why has that happened? And it's, if you could explain, it would clear it up or clarify it, or explaining how you've seen a decision. It could, sort of give an extra slant on it that people might know, actually, yeah, it's not quite as clear cut as I first thought. But then they might revert back to, oh yeah, but that's my home rider, I didn't want him excluded. Same as what I am when I'm at football and and I'm shouting at the referee.
A rule that I think sometimes catches people out is the one about who's in front. And you have a coming together and people will say, well, he was in front, so therefore, he can't be excluded. It's got to be the other guy. Can you explain that to us? Because sometimes these decisions don't go the way that of the rider in front, and just to explain that scenario.
Yeah, it's this who's in front is sort of a bit of it's not sort of as clear cut as what you can't dive up the inside of somebody and be half a wheel length in front and so I was in front. In front to me is when you're in front, a bike length in front, clear. If you move completely to the left or completely to the right, you wouldn't touch the rider behind you. If you're half a wheel length or half a bike length in front, you're not past, you're half past. So then it's you can't say you're in front. So it's then sort of splitting that decision down as to who's at fault. The way it sort of should go is, if the race is stopped because there's been a crash, you exclude the primary cause of the race stoppage. So either that's the rider who's fallen, so they've caused the race to be stopped by falling off, or the person, somebody else has caused them to fall off, as in ran into them or foul riding or done something that has made them fall off, which then means that rider should be excluded. So it's we do get it's tricky, and we get a lot of what we would say is a 50-50 decision, and it's up to us to sort of split it down to be 60-40 or sometimes even 49-51 in favour of one or the other.
You have to make a call, draw the line somewhere. And similarly, first bend bunching. Questions about this. Is that an actual rule that's in the book, or is that a term that's come in and that's sort of what you call it, and it's your your sort of interpretation, and where does first bend bunching end?
It's not a written rule, first bend bunching. What we have is unsatisfactory start. So you could say the start to the race is unsatisfactory because all 4 riders are going for the same piece of track and there's contact and somebody falls or somebody's not given a fair opportunity. You would say that lasts till sort of the apex of the first bend. After that, you're into the second bend and the rest of the lap, and that's you're in the territory of disqualifying somebody. You often get a fall on the second bend, which is initiated from contact going into the first bend, and then they eventually fall off part way around. But that's kind of as far as it goes.
And how much control do you have over the flow of a meeting? Obviously, we've seen many meetings where the home side is down by 10 points after the first 3 or 4 heats, and the tractor comes out for 20 minutes. I mean, how does that work?
It's again, it's difficult. The home promotion is sort of at liberty to do track preparation as they see fit. We have set grading breaks in the Premiership, but only sort of when they take place, not how long they take place for. It's difficult. Quite often as referees, we see the tractors out, we're as frustrated as anybody else. Flipping out, it's been out too long, come on. You phone down, you speak to the clerk of the course, and they'll go out onto the track, tell him, and by which time, sadly, the time that they've used the time they want anyway by then. So we do try and have a control over the length of the meeting, but there are certain things where it's not always as easy as what it seems to sort of suddenly stop a tractor and get them off as quick as what we want.
And similarly, getting meetings through quicker. Like we saw in the grand final this year, the rain's coming down, and 2 minutes was on as soon as the bikes pretty much crossed the finish line, weren't they?
Yeah. I mean, it was at Sheffield. The track sort of lends itself to, you can run quite fast there because the riders are straight out from the pits on the 4th bend and sort of almost straight to the start line. I had the knockout cup final there as well against Ipswich as well, which was again similarly running rainy conditions throughout, and everybody just kept coming out fast, and we got through that meeting in full as well. If everybody plays the part, you can run a meeting fast, and yeah, if they need to.
And one sort of overall question: how do you become a referee then in this current moment? If somebody wanted to be a referee, I think you probably got to get in touch with Neil Vatcher. I guess would be one step, wouldn't it? But what's the process?
Yeah, and Neil Vatcher through the SCB, he would take. Periodically, they have applications. So the last sort of intake was before COVID, where we've sort of had. Trainee referees started. Their training was sort of punctuated a little bit with COVID, but we've now had three new referees through. It's sadly at the minute there's not. I don't think they're looking for anybody new, purely because there's sort of been a reduction in the number of tracks and sort of therefore a reduction in the number of meetings, and where we would have sort of natural reduction where people retire or give up or just stop for whatever reason. They've not needed replacing quite so quickly because there's been less meetings that take place. But yeah, when we do need more, it's Neil Vatcher, SCB, and they'd usually do a bit of an interview and discussion, and then it's 2 years of 2 years of on-the-job training.
Yeah, and from there, it's up to you to climb the ladder, isn't it? One other thing you do also do, being an FIM referee, and this is a bit hardcore, you also do ice speedway as well, which is another notch up, I think.
Yeah, once you're refereeing FIM meetings, you're sort of refereeing the Track Racing Commission, which covers long track, grass track, sidecars, ice racing, flat track, as well as speedway. So yeah, ice racing is something I've done quite a bit of, and I really enjoy it, to be honest. It's different. The characters are different. The racing's different, but it's scary. Sometimes the riders are so tough, and the outcomes can be not so good with the nature of the spikes.
Yes, I think if Speedway was bonkers enough, doing it on ice with spikes in the tyres is just that extra 10% further up the chain, isn't it?
Yeah, the tough guys, definitely. When you stand in a riders' briefing with 16 ice racing riders, they are tough guys, yeah.
Yeah, not to be messed with.
No, not at all.
No, but look, thanks for explaining that side of refereeing. I'm sure that's useful to many fans as well. But I think what we're getting overall from you, it's just that instinct of fairness, isn't it? And common sense that you try to apply wherever you can with the resources you've got.
Yeah, it's just my philosophy is you just want to be fair. The riders want to have a fair, give all four a fair opportunity to do their job on the track. And look, I've got riders who, they might be unhappy with the decision here and there, but if they've got respect for you and you can, I've got respect for them, it's usually at the end of the night, it goes by and you see them the next meeting without any crosswords or sort of fallout from it. Yeah, it can be a thankless task. It's not easy. I think, the score when you become a referee, you're kind of either not mentioned or you are mentioned when something goes wrong. So you kind of only really get talked about when it's a negative concept almost. I think it's nice to come on here and to show that we are, in the name of the podcast, we are human. You've probably seen through BSN, you've probably seen quite a lot more this year, and they're a good bunch of people, the referees. Everyone's come from being a fan of Speedway in some way. Everyone puts a lot of effort into doing the job to the best of their ability. And I think, there's mistakes. There is in every sport, but the number of mistakes, I think, is relatively low. And we have definitely a good bunch of people who put a lot of effort into refereeing in this country.
Craig Ackroyd, a British and FIM Speedway referee, is with us. And in the next part of No Brakes, No Fear, he's going to tell us about his dream Speedway meeting. Next. Welcome back to Humans of Speedway. I'm Ian Brannan. Don't forget to check out some of our previous episodes as well. Recent ones from this current series. We chatted with Alan Rossiter, Roscoe, about life in charge of the Coventry Bees, the Swindon Robins, and of course winning titles as a rider as well with the Pool Pirates and much more besides. On the subject of the Pool Pirates, the previous guest in the episode prior to this one is Ben Cook, who's just been installed as the new captain of the Pool Pirates in 2024. Check those out and many, many more episodes as well. The back catalogue of Humans of Speedway available now. Right now, our guest is Craig Ackroyd, a referee in British Speedway, but also on the world scene as well, and one of the Speedway Grand Prix refs. And I'm going to do a bit of a slightly slimmed down version of the dream Speedway meeting, really, because it's hard to put you on the spot as to which referee you would choose. But for you, if you were choosing your all-time 1 to 7, Craig Ackroyd, and you presided over many great riders over various years, and I guess if you haven't presided over them, maybe your dad has, who would be in your all-time 1 to 7, Craig?
Sort of go with riders who I've seen race myself, but not riders who are still racing, who I'm refereeing now. I thought that was sort of a fair, block in the middle. So first one I'd go with would be Eric Gunnarsson. For me, he was the guy who had his poster on my bedroom wall when I was growing up as a young Grasstrack rider. He won that world final at Bradford. That was the first world final I went to and saw live. I think barring his accident, he would have gone on and had many more sort of top level successes. So he'd be first on the list. Sean Moran as well. I think he was he's a rider because he was sort of northern based, Sheffield, Bellevue. I saw a lot of him riding, and remember back to the 80s when there was the test series between England and America, and I think the flamboyance of the riders. He was one who I thought was was great. Probably one who people would say, one of the ones who should have been a world champion who wasn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Third one, Jason Crump. I think Jason, he finished in the top 3 in the world, 10 years on the trot. I think to have that consistency at that level for so long, that was during the period of sort of, you could say Tony Ricardson had more world championships, but to finish top 3 every year for 10 years for me it's an unbelievable level of consistency. I think Bartos is now 5 years into being in the top 3, so he could be one whose rivals that at some point. Next, I had Carl Stonehewer. Carl was one who sort of raced Grasstrack with. I had his old leathers when I was racing. I think Carl epitomised, he had a great career, but I think the time, he had you could say Sean Wilson the same at Sheffield, but Carl at Workington, he was a town hero almost, and then got himself into the GPs as a second division rider. So I think Carl was, if you had a team, he's the type of man you'd want. When you say 1 to 7, a team. So I said Jason Lyons. I said Jason Lyons, is the ultimate ultra reliable clubman. Perhaps didn't have as much success at World Championship level as what he could have done, but I think he did win a couple of World Cups as, a valuable team member for Australia. Nice guy, Jason. So, like you say, the ultra reliable clubman and a great professional rider. And then the 2 reserves almost. I've got Garry Stead. Garry is another one who rode in the Grasstrack Club with me. I think Garry at points, he was part of that team, that fantastic team that won the league at Bradford, and they had a really good team. And Garry was sort of on the verge of being, a world-class rider, and that's, he's a fantastic rider on his day. And sadly, he's paid a high price to the sport with his injury. But he's such a great guy, and he's someone who, considering what's happened to him, he never has a negative word to say, such a positive person. So, Garry would have to be in the team. And then last but not least, by any stretch, Stuart Robson. Stuart, again, he's one who I rode with. And I think you have to have a balanced team, and Stuart was one who he rode quite a few seasons at, Coventry top level. I think he was second in the British final or third at one point. But again, what you would say is, a ultra reliable club rider, and in his time in the second division at places like Newcastle, where he rode, he was top drawer in that division and in the top division for a number of years as well. Could fill it all full of world champions, but the sport's made up it's made up of riders of all levels, and there's some great servants to the sport.
If you're going to pick a track, to race on, then is there a particular track that you love watching the racing on?
I think it's got to be Bellevue at the minute. Bellevue when it's on point is fantastic. It's people say it's one of the best tracks in the world, and it definitely is. But then we've got quite a few. We're lucky. I mean, with Scunthorpe on its day you could have fantastic racing at Scunthorpe. Redcar, Glasgow this year has produced some fantastic racing. We've got, we have got some great tracks up and down the country.
And which stadium do you like being in the best for the atmosphere? You've refereed in all of them, I guess now, the big ones.
Polish stadiums, when it's going well for a Polish rider, the atmosphere can be electric. Refereeing in Cardiff was, when Ty Wuffenden came out and won a race, you can't hear the bikes. All you can hear is the crowd, and that was special. But I think the sport in general, wherever you go in Britain, people are so passionate about the club, the team, and that's what makes it. When people are having a go at me because I've excluded their rider, you don't mind when there's that passion about supporting your team.
Absolutely. And if you're going to pick one actual team that existed for any reason, what would that be?
The Buxton team that won the treble in mid-2000s. 2010 maybe, and I think they had Nick Morris, Craig Cook, Charles Wright. To say, just out of those three, two of those riders have gone on to be British champion, another top Australian rider. And I think for me that, with no disrespect, but what you would say, Buxton, a small club, winning the treble and having such good riders, training those riders to basically go on and have great professional careers, was what that league was about, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely, and some great talent there have gone on to big things, and a nice little virtual meeting there. I'm sure it would be great, and of course you're going to be refereeing it, so all good. Thanks a lot for joining us, Craig. It's been great chatting with you and finding out a little more about life in the box, and we'll look forward to seeing you presiding over some key meetings, no doubt, in British and World Speedway soon. Yeah, no, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and we'll definitely see you next season when we're around the tracks. My thanks to Craig Ackroyd, British and FIM Speedway referee, and hope that you enjoyed that and found it interesting about what goes on in the referee's box, both here and elsewhere around the world as well. Now, don't forget to check out some of the previous episodes of Humans of Speedway. There's many more for you to go at. Recent episodes include with Alan Rossiter and the Pool Pirates captain Ben Cook. But going back further over time, we chatted with Danny King and Steve Worrell at the end of the previous season. Actually, Paul Bowen talking about electric speedway is actually one of the more downloaded episodes of the moment. And people will look at electric speedway and go, well, it's not for me. Well, it's not for you. You're right, it's not for you. It's aimed at the kids, and to get kids into speedway and into riding bikes and find out why you need not worry about whether there's a smell and noise or not. That's one of the previous episodes from earlier in 2023. Justin Sedgman. We chatted with Dave Rowe from Eurosport as well. Garry and Leon Flint. Adam Roynan. All fairly recent episodes, and there's many more to go through as well. So have a listen and fill your time wisely between now and the start of the next season. Plenty more episodes on the way through the course of the winter between now and when Speedway gets going again. And don't forget to join us for the next episode, which is coming soon, with the one and only Main Dane Hans Nielsen. He's going to be on the next episode. You're not going to want to miss that, so like and subscribe so you don't miss it as soon as it arrives. And thanks once again for listening to Humans of Speedway. We'll see you again soon.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Between aging and busy lifestyles, many women struggle with maintaining their physical and mental wellness. At Aquavita Concierge Healthcare Services for Women, we can help you revitalize your health and reclaim your life. We start from within by balancing your hormones, allowing your body to achieve and maintain desired weight goals. We also specialize in peptide therapies, regenerative medicine, sexual health, and aesthetics in our state-of-the-art facilities. Feel better, look better, live better at Aquavita. Visit aquavitality.com and begin your journey today.